but at the same time the narrative they tell themselves and others is everyone is against us and we're eternal victims. And that serves as a defense mechanism that is impenetrable to another kind of discourse that says, you know, you actually are in a position of power. And what you're doing is at the cost of the rights and well-being of other human beings. So I think persuasion might work with a few people, but it's not going to work on a large scale. Which is why I think that, you know, setting forth an alternative discourse is one piece of it. The other piece of it is there has to be pressure. And that's why I believe in BDS. Because I think BDS produces the conditions for the discourse to change. That when Israelis feel that the status quo comes at a price for them, as white South Africans eventually realized that we're actually paying a price for our unwillingness to listen, then they start to listen. And then Nelson Mandela goes from being, you know, a terrorist and a communist who wants to, you know, throw white people into the sea and murder them in their beds, into someone you have to talk to, because you no longer feel unassailable. So I think that it's important to recognize, because people often say, oh, what could be better than dialogue? But dialogue between people with vast power differences is not dialogue. BDS creates the condition for real dialogue, because it levels the power playing field in a sense. Which connects with the question about what steps should Palestinians take. And I've talked about BDS, or focused on it in a sense, because you know, it is something that we can do here and be part of here. But it's important to remember it is a Palestinian-initiated and led movement. So it is something Palestinians are doing. Of course, it's not the only form of struggle. I mentioned that there are protests every week, every day in Palestine, and Palestinians have tried everything. You know, I mean, they've adopted armed struggle, they've adopted peaceful resistance, they've adopted hunger strikes, you know, they have been ground down year after year by the Israelis, but not given up. And I think that, and this again connects to the question about the diaspora. This is also a time when Palestinians themselves are saying, well, what can we do? How do we shape our struggle? How do we take back the initiative from this kind of dead, empty, so-called peace process of, you know, endless talks that go nowhere while Israel is continuing to colonize the land? So I think all of these are works in progress. In the past year or two, there's been a lot of debate among Palestinians about rebuilding a movement in the diaspora, of creating a new basis for a representation among Palestinians. And I don't think there are satisfactory answers yet to any of those questions, but I think they're ones that Palestinians themselves are definitely asking more and more. So I would wrap up, because you said that you have no hope. Well, I mean, I don't want to take your words out of context, but I want to say that, you know, it is possible to look at this situation and just say it seems so overwhelming. But I think that we've seen enough examples. I wrote an article on Al Jazeera that came out today about Northern Ireland. Norman Finkelstein had brought Northern Ireland up as an example in an interview that I can agree with a lot of what he said. That got quite a lot of attention. But I took it as an opportunity. Let's talk about Northern Ireland as a model. Is there a model there that is worth looking at? What are the fundamental principles? So, you know, Northern Ireland, I've visited Ireland many times and spoken to a lot of people. I can't claim to be an expert, but people who lived through they as children and teenagers and young people, and now as parents who lived through civil war in Ireland, and who can talk about a transformation that they didn't expect to see in their lifetimes. You can look at this country and say, well, it's far from what we want it to be, but look at some of what has happened in recent decades. I think there's a lot of reason for hope. I think the most important reason for hope is that we are not powerless. If what we did was inconsequential or didn't matter, you wouldn't have these white papers being written saying, you know, the campus is our most important battleground. For those who want to maintain the status quo, what that means is they recognize that we have the power to change it. And to me, that's incredibly hopeful.
Thank you so much, Ali Abunimah, for being with us. We have books down here, One Country for $15 if you're interested in purchasing or looking at and deciding. Our email lists are here, and the film flyers are here as well. So, thank you.